Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Here we got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I'm so glad you're here tonight because this is going to be a fantastic show. No kidding. You're going to love it. I am always fascinated by people who have methods of researching really cool, really neat things, and Von Braschler, our guest tonight, is not an exception to that rule by any stretch of the imagination. Von is an author of so many different titles, and he has published through one of my favorite publishing houses, Inner Traditions. And I think that just the information about him is fascinating. He has been a journalist, an award-winning journalist. He has written so many books on time travel and time shifts. He has written Healing with Your Pet, which I've just bought my copy of that, as a matter of fact. But because you all know there are people who are here, so they need to be taken care of and loved on. So that's what we do. But Fawn, I am so excited that you're here. I'm going to go ahead and just say welcome to Fate Magazine Radio.
Hi, Kat. It's great to be with you.
Well, I am appreciative of that. I know that we had gotten dates mixed up at one point, and now all of that is taken care of, and we are on to doing a fantastic show. You have several books with the time travel aspect. I think that's fascinating. What was it that actually drew you into the idea of time travel? Were you doing it? Had you spoken with other people who were doing it too? What was the main draw for you to get focused on this subject?
Ooh, true confessions, Kat. Well,
I know. Well, I do
okay.
know that the book includes your personal experiences.
Yeah. Well, I'd never heard of anybody doing anything like this, and I thought it was crazy. I'd seen shows like The Time Machine, the book, great book, and
it is a great book.
Really fantastic, except for those Morlocks are nasty. But other than that, it looked good. You could go back to the future if you had a DeLorean. I almost bought a DeLorean. I thought that was the answer. No, what you need is one of those like phone booths, or I guess they're called a police box, like Doctor Who has. And you go in that little booth, and then boom, everybody thinks it's some kind of a gimmick or a machine or, years ago, I worked for a publisher. He said, we have to come up with a brain mind machine that could make you, transcend time. And it's like, it occurred to me like everybody was going about this wrong. The only experience I'd ever heard of was my own. And it happened when I was like 11 or 12. And it was the darndest thing. And it took me so long to sort it out. So long. But this is what happens. Honestly, this is so crazy. I'll just tell it the way it happened. So I never had taken the school bus, that big yellow school bus, to school, because I like to walk in the morning, and and I didn't know anybody who took the school bus. Well, I lived about a mile from school, but I always walked. So I never took the school bus. And so one summer, I saw an old yellow school bus parked near my house. And I asked my friends what they were doing. And they said, oh, that's the berry picking bus. I said, the berry picking bus? How do you pick berries on a bus? And they said, no. They take you like 20 miles from here. They bring you to a berry field, and you pick berries all day. You can eat some, they said. And then there's a river where you can go swimming it during your lunchtime. And then at the end of the day, they blow the horn, and everybody gets on the bus, and they take you home. They said it's fun. You don't even have to work if you don't want to. Well, that last part got me, I didn't want to. But I did want to eat berries. I did want to ride on the school bus. Did want to hang out with my friends, and I did want to go swimming in the river. It all sounded just great. So I went, and, true to form, in a couple of days, I think I'd picked a box of berries accidentally. Mostly I just ate them. They were delicious. And my, oh my, so I would go swimming like before everybody else, and everybody else after lunch would go back to picking berries. I would stay swimming at the river. Well, about the third day there, I was at the river, and I got really sick. And they said, my friend said, you've eaten too many berries. And I said, well, no more than I ate the other 2 days. And they said, oh, you'll be fine. Just come on back. And I said, I don't want to. And they said, fine, just stay here. But wait for the horn to blow on the truck. Well, I said, I think I need to go home. I feel really sick. Now, here's the thing. My first book was called Perfect Timing, and I talked about people that are in auto accidents and how time will like go really slowly when you're in an accident or if you're in a fire.
Right.
It just goes so slow. Your perception is all slowed down. So I think what happens is you shift into another gear. You go into your inner self. And you're now functioning on an awareness scale that's way beyond the normal five senses. It's just different.
Right.
You know, it's just different. And anyway, I just knew that I was really sick. And I felt like it was like life-threatening. But what did I know? I was only 11 years old. I think I had a cold once. But anyway, I went and I talked to the man who drove the bus. And I said, I don't feel well. Could you drive me home? They said, yeah, you got to wait till every end of the day like everybody else, and we'll all go together. And I said, but I'm sick. And they said, just sit down and just patiently wait. I felt like I was going to die.
Oh, man.
It was a stabbing abdominal pain like I'd never felt before. So I went to the man who seemed to be in charge of the berry field. I think he owned it. And I said, well, I need to go home. Could you drive me home or call my mom? They said, no, we don't have a phone here. No cell phones then, folks.
True.
And they said, you can just wait and you get a ride home at the end of the day. Just sit down and take it easy. I said, I need to go home right now. I told my friends, I'm going home now. And they said, you don't know how to go home. I said, no, well, I'll figure it out. And then I looked back at the dirt road that the bus rode every day coming into the berry field. And we passed through this dusty road, and then we climbed this little hill, and we crossed this railroad crossing, and then it continued on into the berry field. So I knew that there was a railroad track that went in front of the berry field. And I said, you know, I'm talking to my friends, if I follow that railroad track, if I just walk down the railroad track, it'll take me to my home. He said, you don't know where that track goes? And I said, no, the train goes everywhere. I'll just, you know, all I know is I'm about 20 miles from my home. I don't know where. I don't know the course. I mean, there's a lot of switchbacks on railroad tracks, right? But I think if I just walk and then I told my friends the craziest thing, and yet they never challenged me. I said, you know, this train track goes right in front of my house. They said, come back. And I start walking, and they're yelling at me, come back. And then I can't see them anymore. I round a bend in the road, and there's all these sticker bushes, and then I go around the bend, and I take one more step, and everything turns to black.
Oh.
And the next thing I know, I'm standing in front of my house.
I was going to say, you're home, right?
I'm home. It's like the Wizard of Oz. I click my little red shoes. And by the way, I think there's a lot of magic in the Wizard of Oz stories. Click those little red shoes, because the power is all within you. It's within you. So anyway, there I am. And so all I remember is the train track was like high. And so to get off the track and enter my home, I had to step down from the track. And then I walked across the road, and then I walked across the lawn, and I opened the front door. There was nobody home. I flopped myself on a bed, my mother's bed. She comes home. She says, why are you home early? And I said, well, you know, I feel really sick. I think you should call the doctor. She said, well, you probably just have a stomachache eating too many berries. I said, no, I'm really sick. Well, goodness gracious, it's a good thing she did, because we just made it to the hospital in time. My appendix had burst.
Oh, my goodness. Vaughn, that's terrible.
It was so close. And so for a long time, I used to think, like, I wonder how that all happened. But here's the funny thing, Kat. For the first year or so, I didn't think about it at all. It's like, that was weird. I don't know how I got home, but I'm sure glad I did. And it was so disorienting how it all happened. And I had such a lack of ability to explain it even to myself that I told nobody exactly how it all happened. Never told my mother, never told my friends. Years later, I started talking to my friends, and I said, remember when we were at the berry field and I went home? And then I tell them the story, and they said, well, that's weird. You must have been on the bus. We don't remember that. And then they say, well, angels must have carried you. Now, that's really nice. I mean, I would like to think that angels are looking out for me, and I think they do. They must. I know they do. But in this case, I don't remember angels carrying me.
Right.
I remember taking a step, everything going dark, and then suddenly I was home. And I remember the railroad tracks. Well, the next year, I had to face the reality that the railroad tracks indeed do not go in front of my house.
Really?
Yeah. But 2 years later, we moved north of there from Everett, Washington to Marysville, Washington. And at that house, the railroad tracks went right in front of our home. So I think that was my first encounter. And then I continued to have them later when I moved and worked for a newspaper in Oregon. I continued to have them. And a lot of my experiences in, I think maybe some of your listeners could identify with this. A lot of my experiences with time shifts were just like gaps of time that I could not account for. In other words, I knew I was out and somewhere, but I was so disoriented that I couldn't account for where I was or how I got there. I mean, there were just big gaps of time where I seemed to be like out of it. I mean, I don't mean unconscious or asleep, but I mean, I remember once walking down a road in Oregon, and suddenly I was at the other end of town. I don't remember walking through town, except that I remember that the streets in front of the buildings, which seemed much older as I walked through in this weird state, kind of a catatonic state, the buildings seemed older. They seemed like old wooden Western buildings, and there was like wooden sidewalks that were like elevated, because when you come to the intersection at the end of each street, there would be, you'd step down from the high sidewalk, wooden sidewalks, into mud, you know, and it's like, I mean, it seemed like it was the Old West, you know, and so I have other times where I'm just like, I can't account for half an hour. And I actually checked myself into a hospital when I lived in Oregon. And I went in on a Friday, scheduled it. My doctor said, no, don't go to the hospital. He says, nothing good ever happens when you go to the hospital. They give you a lot of tests. They give you a big bill. They put a lot of pills in you, and nothing good happens. He said, you're going to have to sort it out yourself, my friend. Well, he was right, because I went in on a Friday night, and I left on a Sunday night, and I had a number of tests on a number of machines. It's kind of like the Monty Python movie, the machine that goes ping, that cost $1 billion. Yep. Yeah, I want to hear that machine go ping. Well, I had all those tests, and they would give me pills to wake up in the morning, pills to feel good during the day, and pills to sleep at night. And I didn't take any of them. I gave them all their pills at the end of the time, and they were very upset with me not taking all my medication. But I tell you, there was nothing wrong with me, because when I came out, they could find nothing wrong with me, nothing at all. And I realized that if that were the case, these things were really happening to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know, going in on a Friday is probably never a good idea, even then.
Oh yeah.
So that would just be terrible.
And then they want to keep you because you're such a good customer to have.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's probably actually slower there, not getting as many admissions because, you know, people are home doing barbecues and things.
Yeah.
So maybe you do get better attention on the weekends. I don't know.
Well, they did run me through a lot of tests. No, I didn't. You know, I saw a lot of nurses. I never saw my doctor except when I left, and he came in and he said, I'm very unhappy with you. I understand that you haven't taken any of your pills. And I said, oh, I saved them for you. And he said, they're perfectly safe to take. I said, you would take these? He said, of course I would. I said, hold out your hand. I gave him
you
the
first.
whole hat. And he threw them down on my bed and stormed out of there. But
that's funny.
No, I mean, they tried to find something wrong with me. There just was nothing wrong with me.
Well, we are at our first break. I can't believe this has already gone that quickly, but we will be right back. And I hope y'all come back too, because this is fascinating and it's just going to get better. I promise you. So we will be back right after this. y'all come back to.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of, a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I'm so glad that you are here because I am enjoying my guests. I hope that y'all are too. And Von Braschler, thank you so much for being here because your experiences are interesting, and I thought that probably everyone has had this experience, but one of our chat members who does have things happen often says, I've never had that happen. No time gaps here. And I said, at all? And she said, nope. So I guess maybe it's not quite as universal as I thought it was.
Well, you know, it's possible that somebody out there has never had this. But what I found in interviewing people and kind of talking it up among people I know and researching it is that there's probably a lot of odd things that happen during the course of a day that people are just kind of unable to process, you know. And I make the assertion in the book early on that I think that a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, a lot of people have had time slips and they're so disorienting and they're so brief and they're just so confusing that since it's outside their normal frame of reference and they would feel foolish bringing it up and they can't explain it to themselves, like me, they just kind of blow it off. It's like, well, that was weird. So in that category, Kat, I would put like people who have like these odd daydreams. It's like, oh, that was a daydream,
right.
Or that was just my active imagination, or I was just kind of caught off guard there. And then, of course, I have a whole chapter on this in the book. There's the deja vu experience.
Right.
They say, well, we'll figure it out, and you sit there and you say, well, now, I know you from somewhere. They say, I've met you somewhere. Maybe we went to school together. Maybe you changed your name. Maybe we lived somewhere briefly. Maybe we met on a vacation. Were you ever in a magazine or a newspaper? Is there any way I might have seen your picture? You say, well, no to all the above. And similarly, people will walk into a place and they'll have this deja vu moment and they say, this all seems so familiar, but I don't know how I could have ever seen it before. And they try to think, well, did I see it in a magazine?
Right.
Did I see it in a movie? Is it similar to something I saw and I'm getting confused? So I think that if it's not part of your physical memory, the memory that's stored in your brain, then I think you have to think, well, it's where did it come from? So we have the deja vu experience, and we have the daydreams, and we have the active imagination, and then a lot of people will say, oh, I was just kind of delusional for a moment there. I was kind of out of it. And then here's an old one that people might remember. Oh, I think I had the vapors. I love that one. Yeah, they had the vapors.
Well, I'm Southern, so that comes up quite a bit.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like, it's just kind of like, well, you know what it means. Yeah. So since you can't fit it into your memory, and it doesn't make any sense to you, and you can't explain it, and nothing like this has ever happened before, then you say, well, it wasn't real. But see, what's real is what's part of your moving reality. If you were actually moving in that reality, even for a moment, it was part of your moving reality. It is, mm-hmm. it is functional. So I think that typically people will having a time slip, and they're usually very accidental, and they're inadvertent, and they're confusing because they're not planned. We just slip into them. That's hence the term time slip.
Yeah, because that's what I call them, and then your book is time shifts, but they're the same thing.
Well, yes and no. See, because I think that you can also plan to have a time shifting moment, and it's not accidental. But yeah, basically I use them interchangeably too. But time slips are usually accidental. You take a step and then, oh my gosh, how did I get here? So usually you'll in a moment like this, the telltale sign is that everything around you seems a little bit different, or extremely different. So you think, oh, I must have been like out of it for a moment. Yeah, you were out of it. You were out of here and somewhere else, and now you're back. And so. Yeah.
Yes. One of our listeners said the only thing that she can relate that to is sometimes she'll be driving home and doesn't remember driving home, but there she is.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen, and I was actually concerned because I thought, well, I must have been such a reckless driver. So
here's what
I was distracted.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I think happens, Kat, and I write about this in other books as well. Mm-hmm. They're not so focused on time travel, is that we have a shift in consciousness. Your consciousness shifts, and when your consciousness shifts, it can take you anywhere. It takes your awareness, it takes your inner self with it. You might be physically standing in the same room, but suddenly you're in a slightly different room, and then you're back. And there's certain conditions that bring this about, but they do seem to happen to a lot of people who can't explain them away. And some of these cases are pretty kind of like, I would say, hard to disprove because they've been documented, verified. There's collaboration. They're part of government, reports.
Well, yes, there's studies relevant to that.
Yeah. Now, I'm not. Yeah, not all of them are as profound as some of these cases, but I do think that the average person will sometime in their life slip out of what we call the here and now into a slightly different time, and it might be in the same place but a different time. So you're seeing that place maybe at an earlier time,
like an alternative reality.
Alternative reality. So here's what I think happens, and having done some work with ghost hunting, and a lot of it was very unhappy, I'll say that. I do think that having seen a lot of ghosts and talked to people who've seen a lot of ghosts, that I think that it's extremely possible that some of these apparitions we see are actually slips in time. That is to say that you're actually seeing them not occupying. I'm going to get caught here. Not intruding on you, but it's just that their timeline, their spot on the timeline, and your spot on the timeline intersects for a moment. And there's certain places where this happens.
I have seen places where that does happen. I've investigated places where that happens.
Yeah. So it also explains, I think, for people how a lot of funny things happen, that don't seem normal. Like we see giants walking around, like hairy giants, and we'll say, well, oh my gosh, they look like creatures out of time. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I think that our spots on the timeline can intersect. And I think it has to do with energy patterns, that is to say, energy grids or meridians, or if you want, the tectonic plates. I think there are portals in time. There are energy vortexes. I mean, goodness. I mean, I live on an island that not far from my house, if you take a sailboat out, as I've tried to do, the hardest part is trying to get it back, by the way. But
that's what I found too.
Yeah, it's hard to get them back.
I am not good at that.
No, I'm not very good at that. Yeah, docking was a problem for me. But there's a point on the southeast corner of my little island in the San Juans where your compass will go all crazy, and there's a magnetic anomaly. And so, if we think of the Earth as being of energy grids, and we think that everything in the Earth is electromagnetic energy,
right,
everything in our world is all electronic. It's all electromagnetic energy, and including us. That there are moments when there's a ripple, there's an energy ripple, and that creates an energy distortion. And that could affect the timeline or your window into the timeline.
Absolutely. I feel that happens with normal electrical power.
Yeah.
You'll get a glitch.
I mean, it's very reasonable to assume something like that is happening. Not saying that's what happens, but it seems to me very plausible. I mean, science and metaphysics are coming really close to tying this whole thing together. And I think that there's no need to fight. You just open the dialogue. So I think we look at the electromagnetic field theory and we look at consciousness theory. And I think we're kind of looking at the same thing, energy. And what I've noticed in stories that I've researched and stories I've interviewed people on is that there is a few things that are in common with all of them. And if I could share that.
Please.
Observe patterns. One is then a personal state of consciousness, a shift in consciousness. In almost every case when somebody seems to go into a time slip or a time shift, they seem to shift into another state of consciousness. They get quiet, very inside themselves, very introspective. I would say they go to the inner self. They're reaching into a new level of awareness, like you're walking in the woods, and suddenly you're not smelling and seeing and hearing things quite the same. You have a new set of awareness. So there's a consciousness shift in almost all these cases. And then also I noticed that they happen in the late afternoon or approaching dusk. They typically happen in late summer or early fall. I'm not saying always, but very often. And I think that almost always there's some kind of a location that seems suited for it. That there are reports of time slips common to certain locations on the earth, and some of them are famous and some of them are not. Some of them are very famous, like the Bermuda Triangle. Where I lived on Mount Hood in Oregon, we had a lot of them, and people wouldn't talk about it. They just wouldn't talk about it. I mean, I would say, gosh.
I would think those would be the people that would be the most open about it. That's a very open-minded state.
They're open-minded to the point where they don't make a big deal of it, Well, let me give you an example. I mean, I lived halfway up Mount Hood outside Portland, and on Mount Hood, I lived near this wooded area called Brightwood. Now, the Warm Spring Indians from higher up the mountain would come there typically in the summer, and they would have a summer festival because they thought those woods were spirit-filled.
Right.
And I agree. They were spirit-filled. I agree. They were spirit-filled woods. So I would walk through the woods at night, and I would feel the spirits, and yeah, I mean, a tree talked to me. I mean, that's kind of weird. I can maybe say this on your show.
You can.
But I can't say this over coffee at the diner, I can't.
Well,
I can't.
We are interested in all experiences. Safe place.
Well, the other thing about this location, Brightwood, was that we were located just off Barlow Trail Road. Now, Barlow Trail might register with some people as one of the 5 major passes into the Oregon Territory during pioneer days. And it was the last route that was discovered that would actually save time by taking this particular route. So the Barlow Trail route saw a lot of haggardly, tired, hungry people in wagons pass through. On a late summer afternoon, right about at dusk, I could, on a couple occasions, look out this road in front of my house, the old Barlow Trail, and I swear to you, I would for a moment see a wagon stopping and somebody getting out, all bedraggled and tired and dirty, and just plop down on the ground, their back against the wagon, and then they disappear. It's like they were there, and then they weren't,
Right.
I never for a moment thought of them as ghosts, but visions of the past. So,
like an energy signature.
Energy signature, yes. So I mentioned this to a neighbor. I said, I love living here in the old Barlow Trail. Sometimes right at the end of the day, I can look out and I can almost see those old pioneers coming by with the wagon, maybe stopping for a moment, if I just blink my eyes. He said, oh, you've seen them too.
Oh.
Yeah, so I wasn't the only one. And there was also a barn at the bottom of the mountain. And out of that barn at dusk in the late summer day, farmers would come out with crude instruments, handmade tools, pitchforks and things like that. They'd march together. They'd all wear black. I remember that, always wearing black, always marching together, leaving the barn as though they were coming out of the barn to do something. And then they disappear.
Did you feel threatened by them?
No.
No? They looked like they were just working, not like going after someone with all their pitchforks?
No, it just seemed to me that I was just catching a glimpse into the past for just a moment. It's kind of like the grooves on an old vinyl record or something, and there it was.
Where it didn't skip.
Where it didn't, yeah. So I think that a lot of people have disorienting experiences, and they're very brief, and they don't know how to make sense of it. So they just kind of like shake their head and don't talk about it.
Well, but sometimes to be able to talk about it is a great thing, because you've got, I think that's part of the stigma on different kinds of paranormal or energetic experiences, is that we're like, oh, well, that can't possibly be happening. That I must not have seen that. Or, that couldn't have really occurred, could it?
Yeah.
And so we don't speak out, and then we wind up not realizing that, like with the neighbor, these experiences don't happen in a vacuum, and they are real.
Well, people always want to be able to sort it out. They want it to be like spread out. Like here, we have this idea of everything happening in a linear fashion.
Yes, we're very linear.
Very linear, and we're very material, and we think everything actually is of a material form, and we think that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the more I think about it, it's like the past and the present and the future are all happening simultaneously in one big time loop. And the only thing that matters is, where is your perception at the moment? We're here in the here and now, what we call the here and now, only because we focus our attention, our perception, we focus our perception on the here and now, the ground in front of us, literally. We don't see anything else, but there's so much more. There are so many parallel realities out there, and so, some of them involve us, but it's like we sit on this big iceberg and we're bobbing in an endless ocean, and we're afraid to move, so we just sit on the place in the iceberg where we figure we won't slip off, and we stay there.
Just grab
hold.
Grab whatever.
We have no idea how tall the iceberg is, or how far down it goes, what's swimming around it, or where it's headed. We don't know what's on the other side of it. We just know what's right here, right now. That's our reality. That's how small our reality is.
Well, you're absolutely right, and we have to take a break. But I do want to pick this up. We have a couple of questions also, so we will be right back, and I hope that y'all come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am Kat Hobson with my guest, Von Braschler, and we are talking time slips, time travel, just kind of like the alternate reality that's on the other side of the ether, if you will. And that's how Von, my family, described things to me when I was younger, was that, yeah, well, there's a veil. It's okay. There's just sometimes you get a glimpse behind it. And I didn't even really know what they were talking about at that time because I didn't know what I was seeing. So it was interesting. But we do have a question, and I wanted to get this out there to you. Sherry wants to know, what is your opinion on portals? Are they common? Are there places known where these definitely exist that you're aware of?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And not to get hung up with terms, because language means different things to different people, or not to get hung up on material form. I think there's something like a portal. I think I don't think it's going to like appear to you like, what's the show Sliders, where they have a big swirling, windmill in front of them and they jump in. It's not that obvious. It's very, you slip into it. You just walk, you pass through it. And it's like an anomaly in the energy pattern of the earth, I think is what it is. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So. I think it's like if it's a power vortex or an electromagnetic disturbance or something that's changed the energy pattern there. So there's kind of like there's like an opening, I won't say a tear, but an opening. And it's like when you have just the right state of consciousness, at just the right time of day, you can just walk through. And hopefully you can walk out. Now, there are cases of people that have walked in and not walked back. Those are rare. And usually the experience is not all that physical. So we get very hung up on not only a linear view of things, but also a material view of things. And I'll just say right off that consciousness is based on the idea of our thoughts having form. Not having material matter form in the same sense of a chair or something, but it's having a color and a vibration, and it has an impact, and you can actually see it. You see, so there is well, I hope I answered the question. I don't know if I did.
I think you did a great job, and she says, haha, not coming back is probably alien abduction.
Well, I'm going to say, too, that alien abductions might just possibly, in some instances, not all, maybe, be a case of time shifts where people are traveling from the future into the past with great concern for us, And I think that people in the past also travel into the future with great concern for us, I think it happens all the time. Not when I say all the time, I don't mean continuously, but it happens now and then, and it continues to happen now and then.
Well, I tell you that I have seen moments in time when I was like, oh my goodness, I hope that none of my ancestors are seeing what's happening here.
Yeah.
Please, because
there's
a large Native American background.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Native Americans if I could, because this is one group, the shamanic culture, that have a great tradition of what we might call time shifting. Okay?
Yes.
I mean, they go into a trance, and the shaman will go into a trance, which is very much like in the Eastern tradition, a deep meditation.
Yes.
And in that trance, they experience timelessness and being beyond their body. And why would they do this? For fun? No. They would do this as a service to their people, to go as an observer into the past and listen to the ancestors, not to interact with them and have a good old time in the good old days, but to listen to them and learn from them. And also in the shamanic tradition, and this happens not just in North America with the Native Americans, but around the world, there's a great shamanic tradition of shamans. We might, for our purpose here, say time shifting, but going into a trance and going into the future to explore as an observer, not interacting, but as an observer, what the future holds for his people. And they come back and they relay to the people what they've observed. This is a great service.
Well, it was a great service, and it still is.
Yeah.
I for a while did not quite understand the tripping part of that.
Yeah.
But I think that probably was necessary to get open enough to be able to do that, because certainly the first time, I know that I have friends who have done that themselves.
Yeah.
Gone through those ceremonies. And back in the day, my friends used to do it for recreation. So, my generation. So, I think that's what helped them be able to maybe cross that divide that was there. It opened their minds enough that they could do that. And I think
a lot of traditions, they call that crossing into the other world, crossing over. Yeah.
Yes, going into the netherworld.
Yep.
I mean, they had all kinds of terms for that, but they really were doing it as a service. And if they had to utilize a substance to be able to make that work, I think they were very brave.
They were very brave.
When they did that the first time, especially.
Not everyone was cut out to be a shaman. I know, and today people are getting certified to be shamans, but you would serve an apprenticeship, and you would be almost born into it.
Yep.
And you'd be selected from the group specifically for it. But having said that, not everybody in the community would be a shaman, and yet everybody could have a kind of a shamanic experience. They would call this a vision quest.
Yes.
Yeah, you would go and you would sit quietly out in nature, and you would go deep inside yourself. We might call this a deep meditation. They would call, I think, maybe a trance. And they would see their life unfolding to them, their destiny. Well, this is kind of like listening to your inner consciousness, your inner self, but they would also see what the future holds for them. This is time traveling. And they come back and they say, I would see myself doing this. It would reveal to them how their life should be lived. And I think it's something we all ought to think about.
Well, I would agree with that.
I mean, we're all on a great life adventure, right? Some people call it their life path or their mission or their spiritual journey, however you want to look at it. But it's a great adventure. And it could be of heroic proportions if you allow it to, if you live your life with courage, if you listen to your inner consciousness, and you allow yourself to step off the beaten path Truth is a pathless land. You have to get off the path sometimes to find the path. And it's like, it's like poor Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She learned that she had to find the trail. Every
and
one of us
stay on it.
And stay on it.
It's a commitment.
Get commitment and develop friends and learn along the way and evolve, on this great journey we call life. And a lot of it is not going to be like straight out in front of you in a material way in the here and now, the way people are expecting it to be. Some of it has to be an inner journey.
Well, I would agree with that. I think a lot more of it than people are willing to admit should be an inner journey. And I think that when you are doing something like the shamanic rituals or just doing your own meditation, then that's personal and private.
It is.
And that's you communing with whatever higher being that you are in touch with and communing with them soul to soul.
Right.
So that's a very intense and powerful experience. So, and then again, I had somebody that I knew who came back and said, I wish I had written all this stuff down when I was doing that because I had the answers to saving the world and I didn't write them down.
So,
and I said, well, you don't get to go back.
So here's the thing too, when people have these experiences, there is such a thing as a dream journal.
Yes.
And it's just not all, love and getting rich. And sometimes it's great insights that you will experience when you take the inner journey. And it's good to write it down. It's good to also meditate on it after it's over. And for a lot of people, this happens after an intense, lucid, vivid dream. And
Absolutely.
I think we do a lot of time traveling in our most profound lucid dreams. These are the dreams that are colorful, full of insight, detailed, meaningful, impactful dreams.
Well, it's when you're given answers or guidance.
Yeah. And it's very special, very special. I mean, you have to respect it as something you've been given, a great gift,
Every time.
Yeah.
But, I had gotten out of the habit of journaling them. And I have started back. And it's really amazing because I've actually evolved in my practices. So it's interesting to see what I'm given now as opposed to what was there before. Do you have that too?
Yes. Well, sometimes I'll come out of a really lucid dream, and as I come out of the dream, I'll hear a voice telling me exactly what I should be taking out of it. And a lot of times that actually finds itself into my next book. I've been given outlines. I've been given outlines for books, in dreams.
Have you now?
Yeah. Now, this time shift book, all I was given, I came out of an intense dream, and all I was told was, people have these dreams. They need to acknowledge them. Do something about that. So I thought, how do I do that? So I started researching and trying to find out if anybody had a good technique for getting control of time shifting. Like the shamans, and I think in the East, you see among a lot of Eastern spiritual science, you'll see those who do deep meditations, like in Raja Yoga, the Samadhi mystics. Yes. They seem to actually transcend time and space as we think of it, and then there's some amazing stories out there. And I was surprised. I started talking to a writer friend of mine for advice on whether I should continue. I said, well, you know, what I have here, Frank, is I've got a few stories of my own and a few of people I know and a few people in the family. And then I found a few that were, you know, like famous stories. And I'm thinking, like, do I have enough? I mean, is this enough? And he said, you know, I'll give you as many as you want. He said, you have to keep going with this, you know. And then lo and behold, I found out that this man who had never spoken to me had personally had many time shifts. I guess you'd say time slips.
So they're detailed.
They're detailed, and he'd never talked about them. Oh. Like me, he tried to make some sense of them, saying, well, it's clairaudience, you know, or it was this, or it was that, or, you know, it was voices of the past, you know, and you know, Indian artifacts that still speak, you know, different ways of looking at this. But it's like the distance between what we call here and now and any other place along the continuous looped timeline and all the parallel existences that are out there are as small as our limited perception.
Absolutely. But we have to go to break.
Okay.
This is such a bad spot to stop, but maybe it's a great spot to stop because things work the way they're supposed to. So we'll be right back after this. And, you know, I'm always looking for a little good news. Maybe this will be the day. So we'll see y'all in just a bit.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. Dozens of people gathered for a rally in Kenosha, Wisconsin today following the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse, who killed 2 men and injured a third during unrest in Kenosha last year after the police shooting of Jacob Blake Jr. He's now paralyzed. From member station WUWM, Emily Files has more.
The march around downtown Kenosha was led by Justin Blake. He's the uncle of Jacob Blake, a black man whose wounding at the hands of police set off the protests where Rittenhouse shot 3 people. Blake and the marchers chanted the names of the 2 men Rittenhouse killed, Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber. They said the men would not be forgotten as Rittenhouse goes free. For NPR News, I'm Emily Files in Kenosha.
There were protests across Europe today against new COVID restrictions as the continent is hit by a 5th wave of infections. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports thousands demonstrated in Austria and Belgium, and there were clashes in the Netherlands against new antivirus measures.
Tens of thousands of protesters, many from far-right groups, marched through Vienna and Linz after the Austrian government announced a nationwide lockdown for 10 days starting Monday. Average daily deaths in Austria have tripled, and hospitals warn that intensive care units are reaching capacity. The Austrian government also plans to make the vaccine mandatory by February, the first European country to do so. In Brussels, thousands turned out for a peaceful march that turned violent when police used water cannons and tear gas on a small group throwing rocks and other projectiles. Despite the protests, most European countries have high vaccination rates and resistance is sporadic. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
President Biden's nearly $2 trillion Build Back Better bill is headed to the Senate. But since passage in that chamber is expected to be tough, the White House today spent time trying to convince lawmakers to support it. Centrist Democrats Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are still concerned about the bill's cost and scope. Senate Republicans oppose the plan. White House economic advisor Brian Deese says the bill will help people around the country.
We really do now have a good understanding of where the consensus lies. It lies in lowering costs for American families. It lies in getting more people back to work by actually addressing the barriers that are keeping people from doing so, like childcare. And it lies in making some serious reforms that will restore some fairness to the tax code. We have broad agreement on those provisions.
Speaking there on Fox News, Democrats want the bill passed by the end of the year, but any changes from the Senate means it would have to go back to the House before the president could sign it. Asian markets are trading lower at this hour. The Asia Dow is down about 0.7%. You're listening to NPR News. Authorities say dozens of people, some wearing masks with crowbars in hand, swarmed a department store in the San Francisco Bay Area last night, stealing merchandise before fleeing in several vehicles. Police say 3 people were arrested, but the majority got away from the large-scale theft at the Walnut Creek Nordstrom's. This a day after several high-end stores in San Francisco's Union Square were broken into by a large group of people who smashed windows, stole merchandise, and fled in waiting cars. Atlanta-based Delta Airlines is just one carrier that says it expects flights to bounce back to near pre-pandemic levels over the Thanksgiving travel period. From member station WABE, Lily Oppenheimer reports airports are bracing for the holiday rush.
This time last year, many Americans were driving to see their loved ones. Now Delta officials expect more than 5 million people on board, with air travel numbers bouncing back and restrictions lifting, including the recent opening of the U.S. borders to fully vaccinated international travelers. Delta's chief health officer, Dr. Henry Ting, says the federal TSA mask mandate is still in place and is encouraging passengers to get a negative COVID test and wash their hands as much as they can while they fly. That's especially true for the more than 2 million people projected to pass through Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International, known as America's busiest airport. For NPR News, I'm Lily Oppenheimer in Atlanta.
U.S. futures contracts are trading higher at this hour. Dow futures contract up about 0.1%. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Nationwide Pet Insurance. Use any veterinarian anywhere to provide your pet with the best care possible. Visit petinsurance.com to find the right coverage for your pet and your budget today.
How do we reinvent ourselves? And what's the secret to living longer? I'm Anoush Zamarodi. Each week on NPR's TED Radio Hour, we go on a journey with TED speakers to seek a deeper understanding of the world and to figure out new ways to think and create. Listen now.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am so glad that you are here tonight, but before we move on, I just wanted to let you know that Fate Magazine you can get to through fatemag.com, and if you are missing some editions from your library, Phyllis will find them for you. She has got all kinds of uncirculated archives that she can help you with. We also have trading cards. We have so many nifty things. We've got t-shirts, and I'm going to tell you they're the most comfortable shirt I've worn, but well, in a long time, because they just feel so good. But just check it out, or if you need to update your subscription, fatemag.com is where to do all those things. So check it out. I wanted to let you know that my guest tonight is Von Braschler. We have been talking about all kinds of interesting things. We have gotten into, spiritual journeys to kind of visit other dimensions. Well, I don't even know if it's other dimensions, but other times to go into the future or go into the past. And if you are not in chat, well, you can go through fatemag.com and look for Fate Radio. You can go through WBHM-DB.com and click on the show image, or you can look up Fate Magazine Radio in Spreaker and find us. We've got a chat room just waiting for your questions and comments, and you're welcome. You're welcome to use it. So, Vaughn, thank you so much. I am having the best time with you, and I interrupted you. So,
Well, do we have any questions out there?
Well, we do. Let's see. I'm going to see if there's one ahead of this one, because no. Here we go. Do you think? Okay, we were talking about shamanism, utilizing different processes for going into the trance-like states to be able to move through time.
Right.
And so, Do you think that there have been many bad experiences for people that do these things?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. Now, it probably depends on how you go about it, you know. I'm not a big believer in taking so-called consciousness-altering psychotropic or psychedelic drugs. I know people like to take mushrooms these days. The only mushrooms I like are the ones that are on my plate.
Yes.
I like those.
too.
I like those a lot. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I know that there are a lot of interesting things that have been written. You know, I've read all of the Carlos Castaneda books at least twice. And I think he was totally legit. And I think that some of this seemed very frightening to people, you know, and you have to think about what is, you know, you have to set parameters for your journeying. And I would call this spiritual journeying.
Yes.
You know, you have to set you have to do this in a safe place. You need not to be interrupted. You need to be grounded, you know. You need to be aware how to get back and know that you can get back. You have to have a clear idea of what you're going to do so that, you know, there's a point where you say, I've done it, now I come back. And right. I would just say that generally speaking, if people go about this methodically, they know why they're there, they have an intent, they're focused, and their awareness will just automatically take them back when they've either realized what they were there to observe or attempted it. Because sometimes it'll take several trips out there. Now, there are people who accidentally slipped in time and not made it back. I think that I can only think of one case in the whole world that I encountered, and it's so freakish that I put it in the book. But it's the only thing. It's the only story. If I could tell the story of Rudolph Fentz without scaring anybody, it's not. It's
well, see,
it's
that's
not,
why I had trouble with my transcendental stuff. I was afraid that would happen to me, but I won't be too scared. You can share that.
Well, the transcendental stuff is really incredible. You know, like the Maharishi Yoga, his idea of 1% of a community, you know, meditating on a common goal and sending out that thought form and making changes. I mean, it's as earth-changing as the work of the Japanese researcher Emoto and Hidden Messages in Water, where he could actually change crystalline structure of water and use a group of children to send healing thoughts of love to someone to alter their lives. But the story of Rudolph Fentz sticks out as the only story I know of a time slip that went wrong. And obviously, when you hear this story, you'll see it wasn't a controlled environment. He did not go about this methodically. As a spiritual journey. It was an accidental time slip. And it had an odd consequential ending, which probably nobody could have foreseen. Here's the story. Now, this story comes from 1950, New York City, and the story of Rudolph Fentz was originally described in Collier's magazine.
Yes.
In the issue dated September 15, 1951. Originally written for Collier's by Jack Finney. And he wrote it up because nobody would believe this happened, so he wrote it like it's just some strange story. But through the years, a lot of research, including police research, has verified that this really, really happened. Okay, here's the story. A man in a top hat, an out-of-date suit, well-dressed, dressed to the nines, as you would say. He had handlebar mustache. And he was walking down a busy street in New York in 1950, New York City. And he seemed completely confused and frightened by the cars, as though he didn't expect them to be in the street. at all. And he's trying to dodge the cars, and he doesn't seem to understand what they're about and how to get out of the way. And of course, then he's struck by a car, and tragically he dies there in the street. Now, they take the body of this man, which they don't know who he is. He's just this strange man in this out-of-date suit, handlebar mustache, and they take him to the morgue, and they examine his possessions. They go through his pockets, and they find strange coins. Mm-hmm. They look really out of date. Some of these coins they've never seen. They find a livery bill from Philadelphia. A livery bill. It's like handwritten, right? It's like a livery bill, like a horse. And they find a business card, and on the business card it simply says, Dr. Rudolph Fentz. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say a phone number or anything. It just says
Dr. card.
It's a calling card. It's what they used to have before business cards. It was a calling card. You'd hand your card to someone and you say, here's my card. I am Dr. Rudolph Fentz. So they didn't quite know in 1950 whether this card he had, which they thought was a business card, was a card that indicated he was Dr. Rudolph Fentz, or that somebody named Dr. Rudolph Fentz had given them the card saying, come see me sometime. They just knew he had this card. So there was no missing reports of missing persons, and they were completely baffled who he was and why he was there. And so they buried him. So the police were trying to puzzle this out, and they thought, let's look in the phone book. Yeah, that's an idea. Remember when we had a phone book? Well,
I
they
do.
had one. In 1950, New York, they had a phone book, and they looked it up. It says, Rudolph Fentz. And so they go to knock on the door, and the elderly widow answers the door. And she says, well, yes, Rudolph Fentz. Now, that was my son's name, Rudolph Fentz. Of course, he was Rudolph Fentz Jr. He says, Jr., what was his father? His father was a doctor, a medical doctor. But my son always told a rather sad and strange story. One day his father went walking for a stroll, and he never came home.
My nightmare.
Yeah. So you can walk into the future and not return. I think that's what happened, in a sense, to me when I left the berry field, because I took a step and I moved forward in time and space, and I was back in Everett, Washington, no longer at the Dew's Berry Farm. And it's like I never went back. I never regained that time. Right. I never resumed that location. I actually moved forward in time, but it seems that it worked out okay. So I don't know. Maybe there's another Vaughn out there. He's still in the berry field. I don't know.
He's having a nice alternative life.
Yeah. So here's the thing, this alternate reality, it's like if you think that our consciousness creates reality, any time you've thought of something and continue to feed it, this is also a theory of ghosts. I suppose you've heard this one, that people can create ghosts. Yes. We create these horrible, creatures that have like a form, a dark, haunting form. And they're actually creatures that we've almost like self-made demons that we've made. So, but our consciousness, our energy, our mental, emotional energy feeds this, and it builds it. It builds it and builds it. So I don't know. I think that there might be people out there that had a dream of doing something different with their life, and maybe in another parallel reality they are.
Well, I think that's highly possible. But we have to take a really quick break, and we will be right back, okay?
Okay.
All right. We'll see y'all on the flip side.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
We are confident that none of our hosts are possessed. Being repossessed a few times, that might be a different story. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I'm so glad you're here with my guest, Vaughn Braschler. And Vaughn, I actually had to kind of step on our conversation to go to that break, and I apologize. They always sneak up on me when I'm having a great conversation.
Well, that's okay. It's all the time in the world.
And if not, we can just go on back.
That's right. You can go back and relive it all again.
Yes. I don't think I want to do that. Maybe go forward.
But, I mean, there's an advantage to going back, psychologists always say go back and review the early part of your life. But the early part of your life might have been the previous life,
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, that might be good to review too,
Well,
it just
take lessons from it.
Yep.
I don't think that part's bad. I'm always afraid I'm going to mess up the space-time continuum.
Well, you got to be careful.
You do.
You really do. So I always tell people, don't try to interact. Don't.
Right.
Usually you can't, because if you think about it, most of us shift in time or slip in time, and you have no hands, you have no feet. You can't write anything down. You can't shake anybody's hand. You can't get a gun and shoot Lincoln. You can't do any of this. So what you do is simply observe, and you try to do this as quietly and unobtrusively as you possibly can. That's what the shaman does.
Mm-hmm. Well, because there is the possibility that you'll create a cause for some effect that you didn't anticipate.
Right.
And
right.
That would probably not be a positive thing.
Well, you think, well, it wouldn't have a big significant effect, but I mean, if you think about the littlest ripple in a pond and how it just, all these little ripples go out, and they touch other things on the pond, and these little ripples can have huge effects.
Yes.
That we can't foresee. And then our ripples are commingled with other ripples. So you want to have a very indelible footprint when you travel.
True. Well, we have a very interesting question.
Hmm.
Do you think actual time machines exist? I'm thinking of Back to the Future, but hey, it could maybe be possible. I think we're the time machines. What do you think?
I think you're exactly right. I think every one of us has what Professor Einstein called these strange, we call them black holes or singularities.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he didn't quite know how to find one or reliably utilize one, but if you could find one, you could pass through this black hole or singularity through time. And he went on to say that you would then be able to go at the speed of light. You could go backward in time.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say so much about going forward in time, but he said go backward in time. And now physically, I know I always get criticized by people who have studied physics, but I swear to you, I've studied Professor Einstein. And he says that if you were to physically travel, I'll try to couch my expression carefully this time. If you were in a physical body travel at the speed of light, you would reach a point of infinity, and then you would revert to pure energy. Because you have to think that Einstein, he took a lot of what he wrote from a rather cryptic book called The Secret Doctrine by Helena Blavatsky. It's little known, but he was a fan. He had his own copy of the book, which he kept by his desk as he developed his theories of relativity. And the theory there is that pure energy is constantly being manifested into a more material form or a physical form, which we might call mass or matter. So these terms get kind of confused. But I think that to answer the question, a machine, no. The machine itself would reach a point of infinity
Mm-hmm.
and turn into something like energy and no longer have the material physical form you see, and so would we. So while I'd like to jump with Rod Taylor on that machine and go visit the people, into the future and see if I could help them deal with the Morlocks, while I'd like to go back to the future, and meet my mother when she was a girl, this would all be very, very interesting. But I think that what we do is we travel inside ourselves. And I think that we have a vehicle inside ourselves, which is, and I'm not using the term vehicle, I think, inappropriately. It's not like a Tesla, but it is a vehicle, and it is your subtle energy bodies. So I know that in Eastern spiritual science, and yoga is thousands of years old, and it describes developing consciousness to the point where you can transcend time and space. And different mystics who follow Raja Yoga or consciousness yoga follow this, and they do various exercises called sutras.
Yes.
And these are thousands of years old. Well, I've taken these. I've taken these out of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and I've tried to put them into exercises that people might relate to. There is a capability within us to actually transcend time and space, a vehicle inside us, which is our inner self, our higher self, our consciousness body, our energy body.
Yes.
And everybody has this. So people say, well, if I only could find a black hole, well, I think the black hole.
Searching for that portal.
I think it's inside you.
Yes, I do too. Interesting. So, one of the things that I was impressed by when I was in Sedona, just for a day, but I went out for a vortex tour with one of the people who does the chakra alignments and all kinds of other things. And it was actually a terrific experience. But she was of the opinion also that while the vortexes are there, they are energetic, and like your body would not do well to go into one. But if you wanted to, spiritually, energetically, you could. And I know that my husband, who doesn't do anything paranormal, was sitting in the Cathedral of the Cross going, "Oh my gosh, this is astounding. You need to go and light a candle or something, maybe two. This place is holy."
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, it is, because the energy that surrounds those vortexes is holy.
Yeah, those red rocks are holy.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
there is nothing there that doesn't affect your energy if you are open to that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I went to Sedona for a day too and spent the day, and I remember walking along the trail with my friend, and we heard all these rattlesnakes. Now we realized that they were on the other trail, not our trail, and they were rattling just as we went by, and we weren't threatening them because they were on the other trail. We realized they were just like saying hello. We just continued to walk.
Yes. And I don't do snakes. So
No,
I'm glad I wasn't hiking with you.
No, I've had, and yet my spirit totem is a snake. So it's a strange thing. I've always had a fear of snakes, but I think that they're not really as sinister and scary as we think they are.
Well, I don't think so either. They're just
No.
animals, and they are just doing what they need to do to protect themselves. And it's like in Pirates of the Caribbean when Calypso said, "You knew what I was when you met me."
Exactly.
You know, it's just, it is the nature of the being.
They have a right to live and share this world with us.
Unless they come at me.
Well, yeah, then you just kind of get out of their way.
No, I will be getting out of their way. But,
yeah.
They should not try to stop me. But I really, it's almost a phobic thing. I obviously had some experience in a past life that did not go well. So, because it truly is a phobic thing. But, and I think that that's what phobias are.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But, I kind of got us off track there. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
But
I think we all have different. I was going to say we all have distant snake memories, probably as a species. We were probably once lunch for the bigger ones. Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I love deep water. And Sherry had mentioned in chat earlier, like towards the beginning of the show when we were talking about the ripples and stuff.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Well, I think that water, when you're out of sight of the land, is full of mysterious and bad things." And I was like, "Yeah, David thinks that too." So,
well, things we don't understand,
Yes.
The unknown frightens us. There are things under the ocean that probably nobody has ever seen because it's so deep.
We've not even been there.
No, it's so deep and vast. Yeah, there are creatures.
We can go to Mars, but we can't go to the bottom of the sea.
Well, just think about this, for instance. Like there's creatures in the deepest part of the ocean that can create their own light.
I know, and they're so freaky looking.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because they look like a childhood caricature of the monster under the bed kind of a thing.
Right.
With the teeth and all. But that is fascinating. And they have luminescence.
Yeah, they do. But I think we do too, and I think people just don't realize that. People don't realize how luminescent we are, how we're basically light, and we're encased in a body.
Yes.
Now the question is how to get the light out of the body.
Sometimes it's not something that you even have to work at because, and I'm sure you have been told this too, when I walk up and people are like, oh, your energy is just so bright. It's, and it's like, especially if I'm not having a great day, I'm always surprised by that. But it's really nice that we can recognize that in each other.
And the thing about light is that it's infinite. It's like it's not measured in quantitatively. My teacher always told me light is everywhere and always with you. Never fear, light is always there. Yeah. In the darkest places, there's always light. The question is, he said, can you see it? And by see it, he meant perceive it.
Yes.
He says, because your eyes are not good. We trust our eyes and our ears, but I think to really, really observe what's around us in the deepest aspect, we're talking here about seeing beyond the physical, obvious things on the surface. We have to see with new eyes and hear with new ears. No, I didn't invent that. It's in the Holy Bible.
It is.
It's written 37 times, maybe more.
I didn't know that.
I mean, that's what I counted. I said, hey, I think I'm onto something here. You think? It's like, in Matthew, the book of Matthew is filled with these quotations, see with new eyes, hear with new ears. And it's like, this is mystic truth, and it's really deep spiritual impact. And it's for all of us. I mean, it's like we all need to develop better ways of seeing and better ways of hearing.
Well, and it's not that difficult to develop.
No,
it's just a matter of opening yourself to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what this book kind of opened up to me. There were people that had these experiences, and some of them would come back from the experience with a lot of clarity. They could make sense of this, and some of them were just befuddled, and they didn't want to talk about it, like me, and the little boy in the berry field. Some of them were really, really good accounts, and I think that I think this is kind of the direction of where people need to be going in the future. Is the outer journey is really an inner voyage of discovery, with new eyes and new ears.
Well, I think that's it's hard when you get distracted by all the things that are out in this world that truly are just distractions.
Yes.
And I think that I don't think they're always accidental distractions. Because an awakened society would be a whole different world.
Wouldn't it, though? It
and
would.
And for the powers that be, no matter what kind of powers that be, what nation, what continent, wherever, that would be quite threatening.
Well, yeah, we're constantly being distracted by shiny objects, and curious voices saying, help, 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 help. When I came here today, got set up for this interview, there was this woman walking down the street screaming, and it's like she was just carrying on. There was nothing wrong with her, and it's like false alarms going off everywhere. And why? I mean, there needs to be a clearer way to send messages than that. I think there really needs to be. I mean, when I wrote this book, I started to think about consciousness, and I started to think about Dr. Einstein and how he studied mystical writings and he studied consciousness, and I thought, gosh, our thought forms are just like bouncing off the walls at all time. And it's like we're not in any way directing our consciousness. We're like chaotic creatures. And so, I mean, I've written a new book. It just recently come out. It's called Manifesting. And I'm thinking like I'm going to do something else maybe next year on learning to hear, because people need to develop new ears to hear. I mean, if God wanted to speak to you, think about this. Would you be listening?
Exactly.
If your angel wanted to send you an important bit of information, would you be paying attention? I think we really need to develop new ears and new eyes. And that's all this is about.
Well, I'm going to tell you that you're going to be invited back to discuss manifesting.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm excited about that book. So, and I was very excited when I saw that you were considering the book on the thought forms. So
yeah,
I'm very into that, waiting on it too. But let's see, we have somewhere. Oh, probably we'll get to this one after the next break. So,
okay.
But we're already getting. Oh yes, come back. The question that is in the chat room at the moment is, do you have another personal story to tell? Because your last one was awesome. So I thought that would be good for our final segment.
We'll have them. Okay. True confessions.
Oh, yes. Well, that's what you said when we started. You thought I was asking you for true confessions.
Okay.
Kind of I was, right?
Yeah, all right. I'll tell my
Show
story.
and tell time.
Okay.
But, well, you know what? Why don't we go ahead and take that break?
Okay.
And because this is a short one, and we'll come back and we will have all the rest of the time for that.
Okay.
Everybody, y'all are good with that, right? Nobody minds. So we're going to be back in 2. Y'all come back also.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to the final segment of Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I am so glad you're here, because this has been a fantastic show and is about to continue to be a fantastic show with Von Braschler. And Von, you were going to tell us another one of your personal experiences.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of them when I lived in Oregon that I still think about to this day. And one of them was, I told the one where I lived up in Brightwood, in the Barlow Trail thing and the pioneers. Those were really really
that
profound.
Was cool.
Well, once when I was walking in the woods up there, and I mentioned that the Warm Spring Indians used to gather there in the summer, I was just walking through the woods, trying to talk to the trees. Sometimes I'd sit by a tree, put my back to the tree, and I'd listen, and the tree would tell me things. Some of the things they said were really strange, like, we don't mind the bugs eating the leaves because they're hungry. I mean, that was a typical message I would get, But
That's interesting.
One day I stood up and I started to walk out, and it popped right in front of me, this like really tall Native American in full regalia. I mean, he was wearing feathers and paint in a beautiful costume, and he was tall and colorful, and he looked like he must have been like a shaman or something. And I yelled and I said, "You should not be here." And he looked at me like, "Who are you?" And he disappeared. So I'm thinking like, this is what happens when these shamans would travel around. They'd run into people from time to time. And wow, I mean, I actually ran into an old, I am sure that was an early day Warm Spring Indian. He probably wondered back at his point in the timeline what it would be like in these woods in the future. And so he went into the future, and there I was, this crazy guy, walking around, yelling at him. This guy with the baseball hat and sunglasses. What's he doing here in my woods? It's like, oh, yeah, sorry, Well, then I had some down in town where the paper was, down at the bottom of the mountain. And I would be walking along the street, and the street would just become old in front of me. And then I had this is the experience that actually sent me to the doctors for those weekend of tests. I was thinking about how I could walk through town and see it differently, and it's not the way it looked. And then I got to the town, I couldn't remember, any of it. It's like I didn't have any consciousness of. It was like a surreal experience. It's the only way I could experience it. Express it. So I was developing film, and we decided to do our own film at that time. We built a darkroom, and I'm in there, and I don't know how people remember how you develop film, but you put it in a can. This is the old, formula, and you shake the can, you agitate the can, and you get, there's so many minutes. You set a timer when the film is developed, and you rinse it, and then you put the fixer in, and it's all, it's all timed out. It's all time sensitive. So you do this in the dark with a timer. And I'm just sitting on a stool agitating the film. It's suddenly the wall just kind of disappeared. And I'm in this place, and there's no building. And it was so weird. And the next thing I knew, I don't know how much time it evolved, but the timer was just going off, the buzzer going bzzz. And I tried to figure out, there was really no way to know how much time had elapsed in that room while I was gone. So the question is whether the pictures I'd taken of the beautiful fire were going to turn out, or whether the film was terribly overdeveloped. And so I tried to guess. And it was hard working with the film because I was gone a while. But after that, I did the tests, and I tried to figure this out. And I thought, geez, why am I the only crazy person in my family? And then I remembered as a little boy, when I was like about 5 years old, my mother used to tell me this story. She said, when I was a little girl, I lived on a farm in the Midwest. And one day, toward the end of the day, sun was starting to set, and it was like late summer. And I went out on the back porch, and I looked out on the beautiful, beautiful day as it was coming to an end. And I saw across the field a young man in a white shirt opening the gate to the corral, then walk through the gate and close the gate, and then he disappeared. And she said, I thought about that a lot. That happened when I was a young girl. She said, I just wonder who it was. I said, did you recognize him? He said, no, he's just a young man with dark hair. Told me how tall he was, not very tall, but he was a young man, maybe in his late 20s, and he had dark hair and a white shirt. And, you know, when I was 4 years old, my uncle, her younger brother, came to spend some time with us, and he had just got out of the Navy, where he was a medic, and he'd been in an area of a lot of he's in the Philippines, so there were a lot of tropical diseases, and he was traveling across the country with his two friends. Two crazy friends. They were like wild and crazy guys, like on the Saturday Night Live. And they were so much fun. They stayed with us in our little house. And my brother and I just thought they were just a hoot. And then they left. And then my brother got very, very sick.
Oh, no.
And he died. And my brother had tuberculosis. And it turned out that I had tuberculosis, but I just had a scar. I didn't manifest the symptoms. So for every year I would have to go in and a public health nurse would have to examine me until I was like 16. And then they said, the scar is gone. But shortly after my brother died, my uncle died of tuberculosis. Yes, he'd come back from the Philippines with tuberculosis.
Oh.
So when I was 5, they held the memorial service and the burial for my young uncle back on the farm in the Midwest. And my mother took me on the train with her to go visit. My dad stayed home and worked, and there were just the three of us then. And I rode on the train with my mother, and I remember a lot of things about that summer. I remember taking a bath in a horse watering metal container that they'd have. The horses would come and water themselves. They'd tie them up, and I was so little they just threw me in there for a bath. They were fun people. But anyway,
fun people.
Fun people. So when we're riding back on the train, my mother said, you know, I told you a story once. He said, actually, I told you several times, I think, about I had this little experience when I was a girl, and I looked out across the field from my porch at the end of a long summer day, and I saw a young man with dark hair and a white shirt open the corral door, close the corral door, and then disappear. And I never knew who it was. She said, now I know who it was. She said, because I saw it again when we were there, when we were visiting for the services. It was my brother. I said, you mean Uncle Vernon who just died? She said, yes.
Oh,
that's the way he looked when he died. That was not the way he looked when he was a little boy. I recognize him now. But see, here's the thing that, you know, people can't tell these stories, maybe to their little 5-year-old boy. But, you know, who else would she have told this story to? They would have thought she was Looney Tunes.
Well, I think that I have found when people find out what I do, Vaughn, that they immediately open up and they tell me their stories of that nature that they haven't been able to tell anyone else. So if they know that it's someone, I don't know how the community was then, but if there were other people who have had those experiences, it is always astounding to me how quickly people that don't know me from Eve will share their innermost secret experiences.
True confessions with Kat. But here's the thing, times have changed. You know, there was a time when you don't talk about this sort of thing.
That's
you
true.
Know.
And that's not that far back.
You know, in the book I tell about naval cadets, in England in 1957, they visit Kersey, and they look for Kersey on the map because that's their assignment. Find Kersey on the map and come back and tell us what you saw. But they saw Kersey from the Middle Ages during the pandemic, during
that was astounding.
That was and that was well researched. And those three cadets stood by their story to their dying day. They actually never varied, and they all were in concert with what they reported, and in their description of Kersey back in the 1200s, or I think it was the 1200s, 14th century Kersey. They described the way it looked during the Black Death. They had enough research of how the town had once looked. We have stories like Charlotte Moberly, who was the dean of a women's college at Oxford in 1901, and her friend Eleanor Jordan. They visited the Palace of Versailles, but they found Marie Antoinette there and all her friends in a garden party wearing costumes. And they came back and nobody believed them. And they kept telling their story over and over. And they were researched by the British Society for Psychical Research. And that resulted in publication of a book called An Adventure in 1911. Yes. I mean, these are real stories.
And they shared them.
They shared them. And the thing is, some of these people are unimpeachable, like the pilot, in Scotland that flew over an airfield and described the way the planes would one day look. And they couldn't believe him. And in time, he was proven to be true because exactly that's how the planes looked and that's how the airfield looked. And
even the uniforms in that case.
Yeah, and those become part of official government reports, and they're part of a serious study, and they're documented by reliable people.
Yes.
I'm not a reliable person, Kat, but these people are.
Well, I'm going to claim you as such.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. But, I have to tell you that the book is Time Shifts, and it's available on Amazon. You can get it through Inner Traditions Press as well. And it's fantastic. You've got to get your hands on this book. Some of the things in there will just astonish you. I still am. And there's a whole section that's kind of a primer on how to get yourself in a position to experience this. And it's also a lot of really cool consciousness stuff too. So I would greatly suggest reading this book. It's an education. So, it's just really, it's really a great book. And I appreciate you writing it. I appreciate that it came into my attention area, and that I was able to enjoy it so much and to interview you about it, because it's just astounding.
Well, thank you. It's been good being with you.
Well, anytime. And I'm not kidding, because I've got my manifesting ordered. So we will have that to talk about as well soon.
That'll be fun.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for being so open and sharing so well.
My pleasure.
So, and for all of our listeners, I just wanted to let y'all know that, I know that once again, there's a lot of energy, a lot of angst and frustration and anger and all those things that seem to just keep bottling up and overflowing in our world. And I just want you to know that if you are not comfortable with what you are seeing where you are, you can change that. We all can change that. I know I say this every week, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Be the change that you want to see. Whether it's being a friend that you would love to have, whether it's being a spouse that you you aspire to be, just do that. And even if you're wearing a mask still, if you want to smile at somebody, make eye contact. They will see that in your eyes. The eyes are truly the mirror of our soul. And do it. Just be the best you can be, and you just rock your corner of the world. If you need some inspiration for that, a friend of mine has written a song. You can find it on YouTube. It's hard to find, but his name's Corey Young, and the song is Be the Change. So do it. Thank you for being here. I cannot wait to see you next week, and have a fantastic week. Good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.